Good morning, and welcome to the Sunday worship service of the First Unitarian Church of Salt Lake City. Thank you so much for making time to join us as we gather virtually, keeping one another safe while supporting our community. If you're visiting us for the first time today, I want to extend to you a special welcome. You are our honored guest, and we're so glad that you're here. We'll be back together in person in a few weeks, and nothing would make us happier than to see you here and get to know you one-on-one. So please keep an eye on our website, slcuu.org, for updates and information about reopening. I also want to extend a very special welcome to our friends from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ogden. Welcome. You're joining us for virtual worship today. First, Unitarian folks, I invite you to put a welcome message into the chat and say hello to our friends from Ogden. We're just so glad that you're here, and we want to welcome you. I also want you to know that you're invited to our virtual coffee hour and chat after the service. It's right here on this same Zoom link, so don't go anywhere. We'll take a quick break after worship, and then we'll have our coffee hour together, and we want you to be there too. I have just a few announcements as we get underway today. First, as I mentioned last week, our annual pledge drive is just around the corner. And if that seems really soon to you, you're right. We're starting it earlier this year so that our celebration Sunday in March is a true celebration of how much we've raised and how much we've achieved together. This also gives us a sense of how much we have to work with as we move into budget season. So right now is a season of discernment for you, the members of our congregation. Please take some time to prepare for the pledge season by thinking about what you'd like to see our church achieve next year as we hopefully move out of COVID and into the future. Hopefully, gosh, whew. And also think about your contribution to that mission. This way, we will all be ready when the campaign begins, and we'll be ready to help make it a success. Thank you for that. Just a reminder to those of you who maybe are new to our community or looking for a chance to develop your own mindfulness, we have mindfulness meditation on Sunday mornings. It's a way to imagine what might be and become awake to the reality of your own experiences with peace and compassion. You can join the Mindfulness Meditation Circle on Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Right now they are meeting on Zoom, and if you contact our church administrator, Stephanie, she can get you a link to that Zoom meeting. They'd be delighted to have you. We do have a couple of auction items still available. If you need a little R&R or you want to treat yourself, we still have these items available. We have a silent mindfulness meditation retreat, which is coming up in February, and also a bread making class coming up in March. These two, you can check out the auction page on our website, put in your bid for those, and we'd love to see you. And finally, today we continue with our series of homilies by our lay ministers who've been working with Reverend Ian to learn to prepare messages of faith to share during our worship services. And our theme for this month is hope. And our lay minister today is Carole Straughn. Carole, thank you so much for preparing to speak to us today. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. And now, let us begin our service with the lighting of the chalice. I invite you to settle into your mind and into your body as we light this flame that for us represents the light of truth and the warmth of community. Today and this weekend, we celebrate the singular life of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a man who inspired billions in their struggles for equality and freedom around the world. We take this opportunity to celebrate all that has been achieved in that struggle, to celebrate all those who joined him during his life and even now, to mourn the losses of human life and dignity incurred by the structural sins of racism, and to bolster ourselves and each other for all the work that yet lies ahead. And so in mourning and celebration, I light our chalice today with these words that appear alongside the faces of those killed by police in Salt Lake City, the faces that are memorialized on a mural in downtown, words of James Baldwin. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced.
Looking for a home in Oklahoma City in 1997, I fell in love with a 1910 vintage bungalow in a historic district called Heritage Hills. When the agent opened the oval glassed front door, I saw period light fixtures in perfect condition hanging from 10-foot ceilings and tall pocket doors gliding perfectly. I started to worry, though, when the agents showed me the obligatory disclosures. The bathroom's sink drain had leaked, soaking the adjacent wall and rotting a hole in the floor of the next room. But there was hope. Though the house needed a lot of work, it had good bones. I thought I saw a path to the charming, livable house we wanted. Was I crazy? Maybe, but I had to try. I applied for a HUD loan to cover both the purchase and the renovation. When the contractor's bid came in, though, it looked like it would take more money to fix the home than the market value at completion. I was despondent. Thinking back to that time, reminds me of how I feel about my home country right now. As Isabel Wilkerson says in her book, Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents, America is an old house. I agree. It has good bones, but it needs a lot of work. Our nation started with some good ideas like the declaration that all men, read humans, are created equal, endowed with certain unalienable rights. That Thomas Jefferson, who penned it, was a Unitarian may explain why it sounds a lot like our church's first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Like Wilkerson, I believe we can fix this old house. But first, let's start with the obligatory disclosures. To rehab democracy, we will need to begin with ridding ourselves of the septic mythology that glorifies some groups and demeans others, and replace it with what Wilkerson calls radical empathy. And we'll have to chop down the voracious tendrils of crony capitalism to free ourselves from wage slavery, risky speculation, dark money, and other extractive tactics of greed. And finally, we must unburden our legal structure from the weight of centuries of oppression. 400 years of slavery, genocide, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, redlining, and all the other cruelties of our caste system, and replace it with equal rights for all, especially right now, the right to vote. I never gave up on my Heritage Hills bungalow. The loan finally came through, and after the rehab, the house was actually worth more, half again more, than what we had put into it. Our little rehab seemed to beam hope to the whole neighborhood, and more neglected houses began to shine with the renovations they deserved. Since moving to Salt Lake 12 years ago, I have come to know so many of you who are working to rehab democracy as individuals, in allied groups, or through political action. This church has chartered an anti-racism committee, held consciousness-raising workshops, and gave sanctuary to a persecuted family around the clock for 3 years. Now our action teams are setting new goals. You are a beacon of hope to the whole city and beyond. And you know that hope for human rights is not the same as optimism, which says, why worry? Relax, everything will be fine. Hope means that we know America could fall into chaos or despotism, but we love our country, and we believe that if we work for it, we might live in a homeland with liberty and justice for all. Are we crazy? Sometimes hope is hard to find. A couple of years ago, I tramped through the snow to gather 2,000 signatures for the Independent Redistricting Commission. People voted for it. Public opinion forced the legislature to promise they would redistrict fairly. Last year, instead, they made the gerrymandering even worse than it was in 2011. I was despondent. But because despair is a self-fulfilling prophecy, we know that we can never give up. Buoyed by your spirit of hope, I will keep working for democracy till my last dying breath.
On this weekend, when we observe the birth of Dr. King, I want to remind you of how far our country has come in defeating racism. We have come so far. We have achieved so much. You know how I know? How I can say that with such enthusiasm and conviction? Because of the vehemence of those who are determined to undermine that progress. I mean, we have folks out here trying to ban books or even burn books that just talk about race. We have very well-organized parent groups trying to ban from our public schools the discussion of anything related to race that might possibly make white students feel bad. To the point that they don't even want teachers teaching students about their emotions so that they might develop the resiliency and the maturity to talk about hard things like racism. They're not even attempting to hide their cheating when it comes to voting rights. They'll tell you out loud what it's for. That's how threatened they are by the progress our country has made. They want to bury it, to pretend like it doesn't exist. Now, at the same time, you wouldn't be blamed for not feeling like it's all that much progress after all, especially if you are a person of color. You might feel like we haven't moved forward very much. You might feel like things are going backwards. And that's not wrong. The paradox of this age is that things are moving forward and backward at the same time, just like other great movements of nature, like earthquakes or tides. It can be very difficult to catch a lasting feeling of progress. What keeps us grounded in this work is that it's not up to any one of us to save the world. It's not up to any one of us to end racism. It is up to us to know what our job is, how we fit into the bigger picture of everyone getting free. It is up to us to work on ourselves, to eliminate racism from our own hearts, and it's up to us to confront it wherever we find it. For people of color, it means liberation from every trace of internalized racism. For white folks, it means understanding clearly that racism is our problem. It's our problem. Our ancestors made this mess. We are still making this mess. And it is on us to clean it up. So I invite you to join me this morning in a spirit of prayer, meditation, or reflection as we reorient ourselves to the task, as we rededicate ourselves to each other, as we study ourselves for the hard work ahead. God of many names, we give thanks that we are all siblings in your spirit, utterly equal, even in our dazzling and miraculous differences. Bless our vision, that we may see racism clearly, see it for what it is, not merely an attitude or a bias, but the water we swim in, the way things are, a system of complex and interlocking systems, a wicked problem that defies solutions. Bless our hearing, that we may hear each other's stories of encountering racism, that we may believe each other without judgment. Bless our hands, that they may bear the weight of these heavy stories, these heavy experiences. Bless our hearts, that they may expand with sympathy for one another, recognizing our shared humanity in our grief. Bless every word we speak, every action we take, every impulse of our spirits toward the better world we are creating. Amen.
Talking away, I don't know, I'm just saying I'm talking anyway. Today's another day to find you, I'm shying away. I'll be coming for your love, okay, and take me on. Take me on. I'll be gone in a day or two. So needless to say, I'm odds and ends, but that's just me, and I'm stumbling away. Slowly learning that life's okay, and say after me, it's no better to be safe than sorry, and take on me. Take me on. I'll be gone in a day or two. Oh, the thing that you say, is it life or just to play my worries away? You're all the things that I've got to remember. You're shying away, and I'll be coming for you anyway, and take me on. Take on me. I'll be gone in a day or two. I'll be gone in a day or two. In a day or two.
So now's the time for the offertory. I'm like crying. That was so beautiful. Kind of awkward. Hey, give us money, and I'm like, I guess what it makes me think of, right, is the offertory really is about an expression of gratitude. There is no loan for the upkeep of this place, right? Like we pay for it ourselves, and because we're grateful for it. And we're grateful not for the building or the color of the carpet or anything like that. We're grateful for members who sing to us. And it's just really such a treat and an honor to be a member of a community that is trying to love one another. and to love the world. And so I'm just like, I think that's where those tears are from, right? It's just gratitude. Anyways, to the business, right? Gosh, I got work to do here. I'm like, by the way, I'm grateful. Tristan's going to put up, I don't know what he's going to put up, some QR code or something, and you can give money or something. We just thank you for your gratitude and for your giving to make this happen. In all forms. Thank you. Now that he is safely dead, let us praise him. Build monuments to his glory, sing hosannas to his name. Dead men make such convenient heroes. For they cannot rise to challenge the images that we might fashion from their lives. It's easier to build monuments than to build a better world. So now that he is safely dead, we, with eased consciences, will teach our children that he was a great man, knowing that the cause for which he lived is still a cause, and the dream for which he died is still a dream. A dead man's dream. This poem by Carl Wendell Himes Jr. was shared with me by a mentor many years ago. I'd gone to see him after a very disappointing Martin Luther King breakfast in Boston. All of the politicians were there, and all of the tables right in front had been purchased by big corporations like AT&T. It was $20 to get in, but if you spent $1,500, you could get a table right next to the politicos who waxed on about how much MLK meant to them, even as they voted for racism, protecting the resources of the rich, and war. They used words that sounded like truth but no longer had any meaning. I've come to believe these brunches perhaps best serve as diversions rather than truly honoring the legacy and mission the man charged us with. It allows us to praise a dead man while not having to do anything else. To listen to the eulogies of Dr. King this weekend, you would be forgiven if you thought his dream was limited to living in a world where the color of a person's skin no longer mattered. But this was not his only dream, and I don't think it was the one that got him killed. On April 4th, 1967, exactly 1 year prior to his assassination, he delivered a sermon at Riverside Church on the Upper West Side of Harlem called Beyond Vietnam, a time to break the silence. It was his coming out sermon, one that alienated him from some of his traditional civil rights allies like the NAACP. The editorial pages of the Washington Post and the New York Times said the sermon and the change in direction were mistakes. But a person who follows their conscience does not make mistakes. They make choices. And choices have consequences, but they also carry the lightness of integrity. Civil rights was an idea whose time had come, and while news reports often highlighted the opposition the movement faced, for many years Martin Luther King was repeatedly in the top 10 most popular people in the nation. When he came out against the Vietnam War, however, when he began to articulate his belief in a world community, he fell off that list. In the April 4th sermon, he beseeched us to change as human beings. I am convinced, he said, that if we are going to get on the right side of the world revolution, we as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society. When machines and computers, profit motives, and property rights are considered more important than people, the giant triplets of racism, extreme materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered. It was this linking together of systemic oppressions that, in my opinion, finally brought the assassin's bullet. The three evils, he called them, racism, economic exploitation, and militism, were and are strangling this nation. Talk about one of them, and you'll make some enemies. Show how the three work together, and you become an enemy of the state. This weekend, Democrats and Republicans alike will fawn over the man. Dead men make such convenient heroes. But this week, 11 people were charged with seditious conspiracy for their attempts to unlawfully disrupt the transfer of power on January 6th last year. But cultish allegiance to racial superiority is not limited to those members of the far right. One America News Network, or OAN, Trump's preferred network, was funded by AT&T, the world's largest communication company, in an effort to enjoy some of those extensive profits made by Fox, another network that uses racism to build its audience. White supremacy is as mainstream today as it was in the 1960s. African Americans are incarcerated in this country 5 times the rate of white people. In South Africa, in 1993, the last year of apartheid, they jailed black men at a ratio of 851 per 100,000, a startling statistic when compared to the fact that we imprison black men at a ratio of 2,203 per 100,000, nearly triple the number of apartheid South Africa. Deniers of racial inequality suggest that blacks do more crime and drugs, but this has been proven otherwise. More whites are arrested in real numbers and as a percentage, but at each stage of the criminal justice system, from arrest to prosecution to sentencing to incarceration, even to death, the ratios shift, and fewer whites and a greater number of blacks move on to the next stage. There is rampant racism in the system. It is a system. But I don't want to avoid the human face that makes decisions at each of these stages. Racism is something that lives inside of us as a belief. Being racialized, having race, and we all have it, is like being part of a cult. From the outside, the behaviors and attitudes, the belief system makes no sense. From the inside, the fictions required to make the world cohesive are not fictions at all. They are assumed realities of how things are. There is such a thing as a white person, a black person, a brown, yellow, red person. But truly there are not. There is only the caste system that we have agreed to. The caste system that orients our society and locates people in their places of superiority and oppression, establishes their expectations, their roles. There is a genuine audacity to hope for more than what the caste portends is our future. The second evil, economic exploitation, has blossomed under the putrid fertilization of COVID. Roughly 20 million people lost their jobs in the pandemic, but the 722 billionaires in America saw their wealth rise by more than $1 trillion. In a Forbes article written last year, we learn that billionaires aren't just richer since the pandemic began, there are also more of them. A record 493 new faces joined Forbes' World's Billionaire list last year. Roughly one new billionaire every 17 hours from March 2020 to March 2021, including 98 newcomers in the United States. 9 months have passed since this article was published, and given the steady climb of the stock market, we can only assume the trend has continued. Fear and consumption have combined to fund an economic class that has political desires that are stoutly anti-democratic. And let us not forget militarism. We have a whole generation of young people graduating college this year who have never known a time without human beings detained in Guantanamo. On January 11th, just 5 days ago, we marked the anniversary with great fanfare. I'm sure we all saw this in the papers, right? And we didn't. It was completely hidden. We marked the 20th anniversary of the first humans incarcerated at a military base that we hold in Cuba, a nation that we are still trying to strangle and isolate economically for rejecting American imperialism. The use of Guantanamo is no accident. It is a space that exists outside the legal protections of our civilian society. It is a space controlled by the military-industrial complex and has negotiated a very frightening extra-constitutional arrangement with our laws, our social mores, and our understanding of what it means to be an American. This generation of college students graduating this year has never known America not to be at war in the Middle East. We are still active in Syria as well as Yemen and Somalia. But we are so inured to militarism, we don't even talk about it anymore. It just happens. Right around the time these young people were born, the military-industrial complex, the vast network of government, corporations, and research universities that create the culture of necessary war and militarism had on the books a budget of $300 billion. The estimated military spending for 2022 is $768 billion with a B. 750 billion. This number was augmented by Democratic-led panels in the House and Senate, which approved $25 billion beyond what Biden requested. I reserve some of my harshest criticism for the Democrats. It's sad, but I've come to expect malfeasance from Republicans. The corruption we are witnessing from the GOP is, on the one hand, astounding. On the other hand, it feels like the new normal with them. But the Democrats are far from blameless. The Obama administration prosecuted more whistleblowers than all other presidents combined and secured longer sentences. The administration secured sentences that amounted to 31 times all other whistleblower prosecutions since the American Revolution. There's been an absolute hostility from both sides of the aisle towards those who would tell us what is happening inside our own government. And it sounds strange to say, but I'm really not disappointed in Biden because I never expected anything from him in the first place. But ending the insanity of living beneath Trump isn't the same as being progressive. If anything, we have just adjusted to our captivity. In the same April 4th speech, King added, "It is a sad fact that because of comfort, complacency, a morbid fear of communism, and our proneness to adjust to injustice, the Western nations that initiated so much of the revolutionary spirit of the modern world have now become the arch anti-revolutionaries." And perhaps he would forgive us if we updated the passage by using Islam instead of communism, one great enemy swapped out for another. And perhaps he would forgive us if we didn't totally agree with the statement, even if we understood his point, because we know that the experience of America runs deep. The revolutionary spirit of King, Malcolm X, and the Black Panthers inspired the whole world, as did the revolutionary spirit at Stonewall and the revolutionary spirit of the women's rights movement. And for this reason, the crime of Guantanamo is exceptionally sharp, because even as the world condemns us for our imperialist behavior, they also expect us to be better. And I expect us to be better. The midterm elections are on the horizon, and we stand on the brink of truly unknown territory. I do not know what chaos awaits us this coming year. I do not trust the Republicans. I do not trust the Democrats. And I do worry for those who are in more marginal positions than I. I worry very much. And sometimes I fret over my own powerlessness in the face of such political machinery, but I am emboldened when I remember that the radical revolution of values never comes from the politicians. Every administration I've lived with has been complicit in creating an authoritarian nationalism that holds liberal democratic values in contempt, venerating the state over the health and well-being of the people, and views political violence, war, and imperialism as a method for energizing the concept of nationhood. But my people are not American. My people are the children of God. And I refuse to belong to a side because someone has a different skin color or has a different religion or a different economic class or a different gender or a different sexual orientation. I am not a Democrat nor a Republican because I do not have a team. My people are the children of God. So today I do not preach about a dead man in hopes of building him a monument and enshrining him as a saint. I do not plan to take the day off. I plan to take the day on. King joined the anti-war movement behind the slogan, "A time has come when silence is betrayal." And we have been silent too long. We cannot be silent any longer. Biden does not get a pass simply because he is not Trump. As a nation, we must undergo a radical revolution of values that no longer allows us to witness the persecution of other people and the defilement of the planet as something happening to others. We are one interconnected being. The radical revolution of values is a spiritual transformation emanating from within us. It never comes from politicians. It always comes from you lovely and passionate children of God. We are not called to build monuments. We are called to see the world as holy. Wendell Berry writes, "There are no unsacred places. There are only sacred places and desecrated places." The man may be dead, but the dream is still alive. Let us care for it, nurture it, and become the movement that re-sacralizes the world. Amen. I hope you're all applauding at home. So good. Source of life. God. My darling. We are separated right now by distance, isolation. We ask to be inspired to truly feel how deeply interwoven and interconnected we are, so that we might bear witness to the worth and the dignity and the just inalienable value of every being. And we hope to awaken to that true interdependence, that space where all of the differences and all of the fences and all of the lines we have drawn that say, you are that and I am this, where they all fall away, including the ones of birth and death. And we bask in the thing known only as Source. And we ask for grace. Grace to help us find the courage to step beyond the limitations, the cast, the fear, so that we can act and dance and do as the Spirit is asking us, so we might make a better world. Amen.